Welcome back. Well, Helena, as you just saw, we opened up with a scene from Fatal Attraction where we do have the moment in time where the husband does confess to his wife. In fact, he did have an affair. In your experience, when somebody goes and says to their partner, I've been having an affair, what usually triggers them to do that?
Well, that's a good question to ask yourself if you're about to tell your partner that you've been having an affair, is what am I up to in telling him or her about this? Okay. Is it that I'm motivated to get back on track with my relationship and see if we can salvage what we have going and maybe even make it better? Or is it that I'm personally in the throes of guilt and I want some sort of absolution, some sort of help from my partner in taking care of myself? So I think sometimes people tell for both reasons. In my experience, that's just kind of a crude way of dividing it up, is to say that you might tell because you feel so guilty that you got to get it off your chest. And it's almost like you take a child's position and you're going home to mommy or daddy and saying, I've been bad. And sometimes people truly tell, and I really applaud and support this, because they want to end this cycle of deceit and they want to get on with how can we live differently here? Even if it results in divorce, let's stop the lying. Let's look at what's going on and have a more congruent life. And that, I think, is a good reason to tell, if you're ready for doing that. Now, it's nice to watch if your partner seems to be ready to hear, you know, if they're sick or if they were in a bad spot, very stressed at work or something, maybe you don't want to dump it on them right then and there. You can kind of watch for the right timing to tell people.
And I would imagine that's something that you can assist people to do.
Right, exactly.
Is to say, okay, when is a good time for me to clear this up?
Right.
Now, we talked a little bit about reasons people have affairs, but there's also different types of affairs. Let's take a look at those. We do have a graphic prepared. Okay. Patterns of infidelity. We have the accidental infidelity, the unplanned, just happened. I'm at a convention at a hotel and I meet somebody and there's a one-time event. Philandering, which is a habitual pattern of romantic affairs. Maybe even what some people would talk about as an addiction to the falling in love process that clouds people's judgment. And then we have the marital arrangement that you mentioned, which is efforts to maintain a distance that's required by one of the partners. So the idea that you know, like you said, it kind of can be a stabilizer. In terms of the one time I just lost my mind kind of thing. Right. How common is that?
Well, I think it's quite common. You're talking about like the one-night stand or on a convention, and I think it's very common. And there again, people sometimes think, well, that kind of an affair is not that serious. Again, it's kind of, if you're discreet about it, if you don't bother people about it, it's really just kind of experimentation and curiosity, and there's no involvement emotionally. However, and I think by the way that society supports it in a sense, we have this kind of a support of, there's a little bit of a glamour to the conference affair, to the, you know, the one-night stands. There's sometimes a status, particularly I think for men, I should be careful what I say here, but for men there can be some status in having affairs. Sometimes, however, of course, it goes more into a more pathological pattern where there's an emptiness inside and the person tries to fill that by having multiple affairs, like more the philandering or sexual addiction kind of pattern that we hear about sometimes. And that's pretty serious.
Yeah, that's well, and I'm sure in terms of eroding of the relationship, just continues to erode it over time. Right. Now, in our clip, we didn't see the rest of that scene, but Michael Douglas's character goes on to say, his wife says, "Are you in love with her?" And he says, "Oh no, she didn't mean anything to me." And in some ways, I think culturally, that's often a reason people give to sort of make it better. It's sort of like, well, it wasn't that important. She didn't mean anything to me. It was just sex. It's not like I love her like I do you. Right,
they do. And actually, in terms of prognosis for the marriage, there is a better prognosis if there wasn't an emotional involvement and if the affair was fairly brief. Hence, you always want to, as a therapist, I like to look at a number of things, of course, when I assess what shall we do with this situation? But one is the history of the relationship previously, and also the length of the affair and how involved was it, and how many, is this a repeated pattern, or is it one night stand in a 20-year marriage? It all means different things, of course, and one night stand in a 20-year marriage may in fact be reason for divorce in a particular couple, whereas another couple is going to take it in stride and say, hey, we all fail sometimes. Why should this be elevated more than any other failure we might have amongst us?
That is an excellent point, Helena, which is the idea that there are so many different issues that can come up in a marriage. You know, we could fight over the children, we could fight over money, and yet for this particular issue, sexuality in and out of the marriage is so loaded for us.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
But there's if you think about it, the way that teenagers grow up, they're usually kind of trained in deception. You know, let's not show mom and dad exactly what we're doing sexually, and let's kind of keep it, we'll do it, but we won't tell people about it, especially not our parents, or maybe they'll brag amongst themselves about their pursuits. But so in a way, we kind of train to then later on, if we don't see our spouse as an equal partner, where we have an honesty agreement, a lot of people don't really internalize that. They might kind of pay lip service to that. It's kind of a setup that society helps with, and we don't have really good role models for being out front about sexual issues and about the attraction that's common to other people. Everybody gets attracted all the time, I believe. I mean, maybe there are a few that don't. The difference is in whether we act on it or not.
That's right. It's that behavioral movement, and I think there are so many people, you know, in terms of defining infidelity. I mean, there are those people who feel like, well, if my partner is even attracted to somebody else, they're being unfaithful to me.
Oh, certainly.
Versus, you know, somebody who has more acceptance of, you know, chemistry is going to happen. And I think particularly as our work environments, you know, a lot of our work, we're at work far more than we're anywhere else. You know, and you're in an exciting work situation, 12 hours a day, working on a project. It's very natural, I think, like you said, to be attracted to somebody else. And there comes that moment in time where a decision has to be made.
Yeah, and that kind of situation that you're describing there, Mary, at the workplace, that can be fairly detrimental to the marriage, because they sometimes have a chance to actually develop a friendship, and there's more emotional involvement frequently than, say, a more casual, like in Fatal Attraction, where he picked up on somebody, I think it was in a bar, wasn't it? The work environment, it's funny, because work has almost become a euphemism for affairs in some cases. But when you look at the signs of, is my partner having an affair? Not to say that in this valley everybody is constantly working anyway, but sometimes people will just say, I have to work, I have to work, I have to work, and that can be a very painful thing later, when then the spouse realizes all those times, I thought you were heavily involved in work, you were heavily involved in an affair. So work has become a big area where this occurs, of course.
Well, and that is why in some relationships one of the partners is, particularly if it's been a traditional marriage, he may be very hesitant for her to go back to school and for her to move onward, because of this belief that women are somehow vulnerable to kind of the male predator situation at work. You know,
right, that, and also many men do not like their wives, for instance, to travel on business, because they think that's where it occurs. And it can, but affairs can really occur whether you travel or not. It doesn't necessarily, there are many opportunities that we all have in an average week to have an affair. So
what are some signs that my relationship might be vulnerable to one of us developing an affair?
Right. Well, the kind of obvious things like lipstick on the collar, and she finds the bill for the hotel in his jacket as he takes it to the cleaner. I suppose that happens. I frankly don't hear about those kinds of signs so much. More often I'll hear a person say, I just had this gut feeling. I just knew something was wrong. He wasn't the same, or we stopped making love so much, or we started making love a lot and he started wanting, or she started wanting to experiment with different things. So there's changes. And again, there may be a lot more work or a lot of absences from the home frequently. Sometimes a person that's having an affair will want a lot more TV in an effort not to have to talk with the partner at home. So of course, that doesn't mean everybody who all of a sudden is exhibiting some changes in an area of life or having an affair, that we need to caution against that. But if there are a lot of areas that are changing kind of, maybe subtly, but a lot of different areas and the degree to which it's happening, you might, and if you're also having this intuitive voice saying, something's just not right here. That's when people start wondering what's going on.
And that's when they may call you. We have a couple of minutes. Let's say the couple, it's out on the table, we've had an affair. What are some recovery things that
That's
advice
really
you can give?
important that we get to that. I would say, first of all, to slow down. Because frequently, especially the one that just has found out that there's been an affair, or maybe they've known a little bit by the time they come into treatment. And by the way, I won't treat a couple if I know one is having an affair and the other doesn't know.
Okay.
I ask them to put couples counseling on hold till that's been out in the open.
Absolutely.
And the same thing, sometimes the first things first, we have to deal with whether they put the affair on hold, whether they've stopped the affair,
okay.
or at least put it on hold so we can see what's up and down. And sometimes that's something that the person who's having the affair doesn't want to do. Okay. And so that's the first order of business. I usually say that that's your business. I'm not going to make a value judgment about that, but I will not do the couples counseling with you till you can put the affair on hold, okay. So that it's either counseling or affair. So the first thing that we need to do is to deal with the shock that the person who's been betrayed feel, and that this tremendous feeling of betrayal and hurt that almost always is there.
We're going to have to close here in a minute. Do you have a last caution for people who may be watching this evening?
Well, just the fact that an honesty agreement is better than trying to promise a person, I'll never do this again, I'll never have another affair. People don't trust that because they've just been betrayed. It's better to promise, if I ever think that I want to have an affair again, you'll know about it, we'll be talking about it, I'll tell you about it. That people can usually trust. And then you can begin to rebuild trust from that. At least they don't go around looking over their shoulder all the time, but they feel that, okay, I'll be clued in if something starts happening like that again, and meanwhile we can work on making communication better. That
is an excellent, excellent suggestion. I want to thank you for joining us tonight on Bay Area Psychology. I want to thank you for being with us. Be here next week when we address coping with unemployment. I'm Mary Crocker Cook. Good night.